previous artillery tests, I may have underestimated biters a bit. I've come up with an upgraded design of my perimeter walls, and it's time to see how they hold up. This particular location has a pretty tight land bridge, which the offended biters have to funnel through. This gives us a very high flow of biters to just one location, which gives us a perfect testing ground. And yes, the footage is sped up, by the way. You might see the turrets lose power from time to time, but don't worry, there is nothing wrong with the power network. The intermittent loss of power is actually a feature. Most of the improvements here are just from adding target priority and more Tesla turrets. The Tesla turret's main job is crowd control, trying to keep the big biters in place while the laser turrets take care of the spitters. So all of this was to test out a new artillery and wall system, and I would say the results are pretty good. Checking the stats afterwards, it seems I was able to hold off about 2000 biters per minute without having to intervene. Interestingly, I had to film this sequence twice, and only the second time did I actually lose anything. It happened at the choke point while I was filming it, and I wonder if perhaps me observing it changed the outcome. The train ended up consisting of 160 wagons, which you might wonder why not just go for even 200. Originally, that was actually the plan, but of course making 200 artillery wagons in epic quality does take some time. And at some point I had the realization that it doesn't really matter what I do now, since it's all pointless. I'm going to have to remake every single one of these in legendary quality soon. And that's probably what's going to happen by the end of this episode. And odds are also that I'm probably going to go overboard and make it much bigger than it has to be. It's a bit of a shame that it took me this long to realize. I actually spent so much time modifying my factory to make epic quality that I thought it was going to be its own episode. But you know, screw it, let's go to Aquilo. On the bright side, I can at least make just about anything I want in epic quality now. Starting with my nuclear power production. If for some reason you're wondering, yes, this was incredibly expensive to make. But it does produce almost twice the power that one of these setups could make. And no, there isn't any efficiency bonus or anything in here, it just makes power faster. Really, the only advantage here is that you get the same power production using half the area. So that's pretty cool, I guess. I'm not entirely sure if it makes up for the fact that making 10 of these normal quality would be, first of all, much cheaper, and also give me 5 times the power production. I did actually realize this, so I did the only sensible thing and made 2 of them. So I'm making some claims that the high-quality nuclear reactors are kinda useless, but that's not entirely true. For they are actually incredibly useful in certain scenarios. For example, I am now making preparations to go to Aquilo. And on Aquilo, real estate is pretty expensive. By the way, it might look like I'm reading a briefing here, but I'm actually not. The only information I actually absorbed here is that there is crude oil, and I conveniently skipped the part where it says I need concrete to build. So I naively started to load my platform with what I thought I needed, starting with nuclear fuel and high-quality heating towers, nuclear reactors, and pump jacks. But then I thought back to my time on Vulcanus and remembered how annoying it was that I didn't bring concrete to build the foundries. So by accident, I ended up bringing a bunch of concrete, which was completely essential. And then I modified the platform to have a nuclear reactor. The reason for the reactor is because I thought the efficiency of solar panels on Aquilo was 1%. And while this is actually true, that's only on the surface of Aquilo. In orbit, you still get 60% efficiency. And this is the exact scenario where high-quality nuclear reactors shine. I get twice the amount of power using the same amount of space. If there's something I wish I'd changed here, it's probably not put the reactor exactly where the asteroids are likely to hit. Let's just hope nothing unfortunate happens. Now I just have to wait for the bots to take all my stuff and I should be ready to go. You may have noticed that I've also exchanged all my bots for ones in epic quality. Yes, almost all 10,000 of them. I'm not going to be bringing Dan with me this time, it just doesn't seem like it would be very useful. And here's something that's been annoying me every single time I get on a rocket. If I'm allowed to bring a power armor, surely a few blueprints shouldn't be an issue. And we're finally on our way to Aquilo. We have to go there via Gleba, so things won't get exciting just yet. Let's just skip forward so we can see how the platform handles the new asteroid type. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, but the asteroid types you will encounter on the way to Aquilo are much bigger and basically impervious to the damage of the gun turrets. So I did add rocket turrets and rocket production so we could break them up. I mean, obviously I did, because if I didn't, I'd already be dead. By the way, I'll try to remember to add a playlist for the full series in the description. While I did make it all the way without any serious mishaps, it did get pretty close at times. I really should add some more turrets to future-proof it. Something I surely won't forget until it's too late. There really isn't a lot of room to work with here. Which, if nothing else, at least means I'll get to reap the benefits of spending all that time making all my stuff into epic quality. Like on the other planets, harvesting stuff off the ground will show you some of the things you'll be working with later. In this case, we get ice platforms and lithium. The lithium we'll talk about later, but the ice platforms are of course because, well, Aquilo is an ocean planet and we're going to need somewhere to build. It is also the reason why we need a lot of concrete. Because, as you can see, this planet is very cold. This means we have to heat our machines in order for them to work, and if we heat them, that also means that we have to insulate them from the ice or the ice will melt. Inserters are no longer frozen, but we still don't have any power. And starting power production isn't as simple as it seems. Our options for making electricity is either using solar power or boiling water. It might seem very simple to just boil water, after all we are on an ocean planet. That would have been true if the ocean consisted of water. So, if we want to generate power, first we're going to have to run the ammonium solution through a chemical plant to separate the water and ammonium. This will give us ice and ammonia. After that we can simply just melt the ice and boil that. Herein lies another problem. Unlike the American healthcare system, a chemical plant isn't going to run on thoughts and prayers. So despite the abysmal 1% efficiency of solar panels, we're actually going to have to use them to get started. I just noticed that since the solar panels don't need to be heated to work, we also don't need concrete to insulate ice. A nice little detail I would appreciate a lot more, if not for a little thing you'll see soon. I'm currently using 4 solar panels, and unsurprisingly, 4% of a single solar panel back on Naos isn't going to melt ice very quickly. At least we only have to wait for this once. Eventually, I also remember that I have efficiency modules. This reduces the energy needed by 80%. So here's the thing that kinda annoyed me. I didn't need to use concrete to insulate the ice from the solar panels. That's pretty cool. But for some reason, 500 degrees steam can't move through pipes if the pipes are too cold. I just kinda assumed that at that temperature we wouldn't have to worry about the pipes freezing. Also, I do remember being able to store steam in a tank for however long I wanted without it dropping a single degree. Which makes me think that the pipes are so well insulated that they would never actually freeze anyway. Well, we finally have power production at least. Being able to actually run the chemical plants now, my next goal is to actually do the ammonia separation. I don't know what I'm going to use the ammonia for yet, but I really need to start making ice platforms. Having to touch absolutely everything in the factory with a heating pipe is a bit annoying, sure, but so far I've found it weirdly enjoyable. If me having to run the pipes all the way down here to get the ammonia solution into the chemical plants makes it look like I maybe not thought this through properly, then please know that you are entirely correct. I really should have moved everything a bit further back to, well, actually be able to place my belts. But I probably wouldn't have enough platforms for that. I don't really like planning, and I would prefer to just keep suffering the consequences than starting now. I also haven't put down any row ports yet, and there's actually a good reason for that. The bots apparently don't like the cold weather, causing them to use 5 times as much energy as they would back on Naos. As a consequence, this also means they can only fly 20% the distance they normally could. Making ice platforms is incredibly slow, it seems, so it's a good thing I started this early. A problem I immediately noticed is that making ice also makes ammonia, which I don't really have a way of getting rid of, so I have to stockpile it for now in order to keep making ice platforms. I'm sure it's going to be very useful later, but at the moment I just don't know. While waiting for some more ice platforms to get made, I set up my logistics network. And seeing how long the bots take to charge for even the most minuscule of tasks, I feel like I've been getting some pretty good payoff for making the road ports and bots in high quality. especially the bots, since you increase their battery capacity by 100% for each quality level. While looking through the recipes available to me, I discovered a way to get rid of my excess ammonia. I can use it to make fuel, which I can then burn in a heating tower to assist with heating and power production. But I'm not really in a hurry to do that, I still have a lot of nuclear fuel with me. And I'm also a lot more interested in starting my lithium production. But just because I have a lot of fuel for my reactors doesn't mean I shouldn't go for a more optimal design. This should be enough for the foreseeable future. The first step of making lithium is pumping up lithium brine. As mentioned in the Volcanus episode, connecting every single pump jack with pipes is something I really hate. My feeling on the matter hasn't changed, and it's definitely not been made any better by having to make sure that every single pipe is heated. I have actually come up with a pretty nifty blueprint to alleviate this problem, but it sadly doesn't work on this planet. A shame considering just how much quicker this is. I really underestimated just how long it would take a single heating tower to heat all these pump jacks. What you're seeing right now is a time-lapse sped up by 20 times. The smart thing to do would have been to at least make a temporary connection to the already heated pipes from the nuclear reactors. While I was waiting on this, my platform was taking a trip back home to pick up some concrete and other supplies I needed. And when it got back, it got a bit too excited and delivered a load that was way too big and it spilled everywhere. I'm sure this is very relatable. Making the lithium itself isn't too complicated. The holmium plates have to be imported from Fulgora, and the lithium brine and ammonia we already have. The most difficult part of this is the secret fourth ingredient, heating pipes. It was while building this setup that I realized that, while getting the heating pipes everywhere they need to be is very fiddly, I really enjoy this plant. I suspect that it might be the fact that while there are lots of things to keep in mind, it's all pretty low stakes and relaxed, pretty chill. And yes, that's a pun. I didn't intend for it to happen, but it did, and I refuse to apologize. And here comes the first batch of lithium. Great. Why am I making this again? There seems to be many good reasons to make this. First of which is this plant's production building, the cryogenic plant, which we will be able to make once we turn the lithium into lithium plates. At least that would have been the case if I had the foresight to bring superconductors. While waiting for the platform to return with my superconductors, I set up some pump jacks for oil production. And once it did return, everything was ready to start making cryogenic plants. But this time, I wasn't going to make the same mistake I always do when I get a new production building. This time, I was on top of things and immediately switched out the assembling machine for a cryogenic plant so I could take advantage of that sweet 50% production bonus. I think this is what people call character growth. I always forget to switch out my assembling machine and miss out on a bunch of free buildings. Wait. So far, every single one of the new production buildings has come with a base productivity bonus. This means you can get free stuff even on stuff you normally can't use productivity modules on. When I finally remember to take advantage of this, it doesn't have a productivity bonus. This would have been sad if it wasn't incredibly funny. And looking at the big picture, 8 module slots is better in most cases. So this building is a sort of upgrade to the chemical plant. It has 5 more module slots and doubled crafting speed. It's by no means a replacement since there are many recipes they don't share. Also, the chemical plant is 25 tiles big, while the chemical plant is just 9. This does create a weird situation where the cryogenic plant is actually worse in many situations if you're not using modules. But if you are using modules, it's way superior. Not just from the fact that you have so many more module slots, but since it's also kinda equivalent to 2 chemical plants, then putting 1 speed module into one of these is equivalent to putting 2 speed modules into chemical plants. And the ability to put more productivity modules into these means you can get much higher productivity bonus than you could on a normal chemical plant. Unfortunately, it's probably never going to be better than a chemical plant when it comes to power efficiency. As I talked about earlier, this solid fuel from ammonia recipe is going to get rid of excess ammonia while also keeping my factory warm and producing power. We can also use these to make lithium, so I should probably take care of that. And there we go, a 64% productivity bonus while keeping energy usage to a minimum. It's about time we start producing this planet's science packs. And for that, we're going to need fluorine. I don't know how much we need yet, but we have this very convenient single one right here, so I'm going to try that first and see if that's enough. It's probably about time we take out the diagram and see just how we make these science packs. Our goal is the science packs way down here. We have actually done most of the things we need to do, so let's just go over them and mark them off. Ice we got when we separated the ammonia solution, which also gave us the ammonia we need. Combined with lithium brine and holmium plates, we made lithium, which we in turn made into lithium plates. That's 2 out of 3 ingredients taken care of. So let's move our attention over to this side. Just a few moments ago we used crude oil and ammonia to make solid fuel. And the pump jack we just put down was for fluorine. And then we just had to borrow some lithium from over here and we have everything we need to make fluoroketone. One thing you'll immediately notice is that fluoroketone comes in 2 different flavors. When you first make it, it will be hot. In order to use it to make science packs, you first have to cool it. But when you make science packs, you only use half of the fluoroketone and you get the rest of it back as hot. So the important thing here is that the fluoroketone you get back has to go somewhere, so you have to make sure that the storage tank for the hot fluoroketone never gets full. The solution to this is using a pump that only pumps up to a certain level. Use this to limit the amount of fresh fluoroketone that's allowed into the system. And then use a different pump for all the fluoroketone that's been used in different applications and force it back into that same storage tank to restart the cycle. And make note that I'm not going to be using a storage tank for a cold fluoroketone. In order to make the system more reliable, I don't want the amount of cold fluoroketone to exceed the amount I can store of the hot. To put it simply, if I leave room for 10,000 hot fluoroketone, then the system shouldn't get stuck if I never have more than 20,000 cold fluoroketone. And that was the final piece of the puzzle. We have everything we need to make science packs now. I'm very close to producing my first science pack now, so it's probably good that I have to start importing what I need to build the rocket silos. And there we have the first science pack. And of course now we have to get it back home. I'm most likely going to regret this later, but I have an open space here in the middle, so I'm just going to make them here. While waiting for the materials to arrive, I decided to check out my artillery station. The circuitry has apparently only counted a single biter attack in the 3 hours I've been gone, so not much is happening here it seems. If you're interested in how all the circuitry works, stick around until the end of the video and I'll go over it then. And something I always end up doing while waiting is trying to improve my productivity module production. My system for making them is absolutely horrible and it's been that way since the very beginning. You'd probably be surprised just how many hours of footage I've cut out of me trying to improve this mess. I'm hoping these new science packs will give me access to something that will improve the process. Oh, that's right, I was supposed to add more turrets, wasn't I? Imagine forgetting to do something that's very quick and simple to do. How very in character of me. This whole thing could probably have been avoided if I just started using piercing ammo. But that sounds like a hassle, so I'm just going to put down some more turrets instead. We did reach Aquilo in the end, so it's probably fine. Rocket silos are now in production, and the final piece of the puzzle is, of course, well, the rockets themselves. While it is possible to have space platforms in orbit that gather materials and send it down here so I can make the rockets, at the moment it's a lot more reasonable to just import it. With the exception of rocket fuel, which we can produce here using ammonia. And with that, I would say that phase 1 of Aquilo is done. Let's also make a dedicated platform for transporting the science packs. It would probably be suicide to send it to Aquilo before it's had time to build up its resource stockpile, so I'll have the old platform do the first trips. I'm starting to suspect that maybe adding a few more turrets wasn't enough. We're stuck halfway between Gleba and Aquilo, but we still have a few more turrets in storage, so we might still get out of this. First off, we simply don't have the materials to rebuild this front section, so let's just get rid of it. And then we have to start getting down some more turrets. It's a bit unfortunate I got rid of all my platform scaffolding to bring more stuff to Aquilo. If I just toggle my engines on and off repeatedly to keep my speed down, I should probably be able to inch my way all the way to Gleba. Assuming I don't spawn too many asteroids at the same time, I should be fine. Okay, so I clearly made a mistake here. I had forgotten that my rocket turrets were set to ignore the medium asteroids. And the fact that my turrets were then ignoring the medium asteroids made me think that they were the small, harmless variety instead. I'm struggling to understand why I didn't put down gun turrets to begin with. I probably don't need to say this, but I'm going to do anyway. That was pretty bad. But it could have been much worse. I'm pretty sure we can still make it to Gleba if you're just a bit more careful. The biggest problem here by far is that I don't have enough platform. If I'm going to have any chance at all, I have to start cannibalizing. Looking back, it would probably have been better to just deconstruct all the crushers. That would have given me more than enough room to get where I needed. And honestly, at this point, I'm probably safe no matter what I do. I had already crossed the point where gravity was slowly pulling us towards Gleba anyway. And also, as we put more distance to Aquilo, the number of large asteroids dwindle. After reaching Gleba, making it the rest of the way to Navis was pretty simple. And now, in order to fix my platform, I had to remove any modifications I've made. It's fortunate I've just made a copy of it. That saves me the hassle of loading a previous save to get the blueprint. And now I really should start making better ammunition. I won't do that, of course. I'm just saying that I know that I should. Oh, and I forgot to rebuild the reactor. It's not a huge deal, really. The solar panels supply most of the energy I need, and the steam stored in the tanks will last me quite a while. And of course, I haven't learned my lesson, so I quickly ran out of platform. Since the platform was now stationed over Gleba, I started making some platforms here. It would have been faster to just go back to Navis, but I know what kind of person I am, so this will probably be very useful in the future. A very solid prediction, considering this happened 2 minutes later. Here we have the science transport copy I built earlier. Not only is it missing the extra turrets, it also doesn't have enough coal to make rockets. Honestly, the whole platform needs a redesign. The asteroids agree and are helping the best I can. The thing is that this platform was actually supposed to be in stationary orbit around Navis. I could be fucked to deal with this a second time, so I just loaded a save. The reason why this happened, it seems, is that I had sent it out to gather asteroids with carbon. This would have been a problem if I just hadn't made Aquilo a possible destination. Eventually, after some more upgrades, modifications and repairs, it was time to test if these modifications actually made an appreciable difference. And things do seem a bit more stable now. The question is if I'm going to leave it alone until I have another incident, or if I'm going to make a better design. That's not the right question when I'm thinking about it. It's more of a, am I going to have another incident and therefore have to make a new design? Either way, at least we're finally getting the science specs all the way to Navis. The question is, what should I research first? We do have quite a few options, which we'll go over later, but I think it makes sense to start by unlocking legendary quality. That would let me start building up a stockpile to later make the top quality stuff. And while talking about science, I've kind of reached a point where I can't really put enough science packs onto the belts for them to reach all the labs. If I want to speed up science further, I would probably have to restructure quite a few things. Either that or start making higher quality science packs, which is something I have done for space science. And I guess I could just use some requester chests, but that's boring. And there we go, legendary quality unlocked. Let's see if we're already getting some. Well, that was quick. I assume that was from this recycling setup on Vulcanus. And some coal as well. We're probably going to be talking more about that in a few moments. That's what I assume anyway. Due to this new unlock, there are large parts of my factories that need updating. This seemed like so much of a pain in the ass that I stopped recording. And now that I'm done editing everything I have, I guess I have to go actually fix this. First of all, I really should redesign my entire platform and make sure that it doesn't explode anymore. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to hope for the best. I am of course going to have to make some changes if I'm ever going to go beyond Aquilo. To my surprise, these platforms I built that refine asteroid chunks into higher quality, it just kinda works. Almost all my materials of legendary quality will be sourced from here, except for copper and steel, which will have to go through another step. And that step will require plastic. It might seem like a waste to make water using high quality ice, but I frankly have too much of it. My next step now in making steel and copper is getting legendary production modules. That will require byte which absolutely sucks to get in high quality. But we have a new research available to us, which will hopefully make it a bit easier. This technology will let us make those captive outer spawners and place them wherever we want. This process will require some fluoroketone. There will be more things in the future which require fluoroketone in larger quantities, so we better start shipping it now. And while I'm at it, I might as well add a train station which supplies it to the train network. After that, it didn't take long to make our first spawner. And as I feared, they can also spoil. I could have checked before making them, but I was really hoping they wouldn't. Making large-scale production with these are probably going to require a more hands-on approach, so I better go home before I start making more of these. That's unfortunately going to delay things a bit, because there are some things I want to bring with me before going home. So we're going to have to do a bit more research. Let's start by making some fusion reactors. In order to make them, we need a new quantum processor, which are not only slow to make, but also a bit expensive. Each reactor needs 250 of them, so we better scale our production. At the moment, I have no idea how these work, but once you fiddle around with them a bit, they aren't too complicated. Each generator has a vertical and horizontal direction. If you give the generators a fusion cell and supply cold fluoroketone in one direction, it will then start producing plasma in the other. You can then run the plasma through fusion generators and generate power. And after plasma is consumed, the fluoroketone will be returned to you. Of course, it will have to be cooled again before you can use it. Like the nuclear reactors, there's also a neighbor bonus to keep in mind. And while I said they weren't too complicated to get working, I really don't feel like I understand them well enough to talk about them in depth. We can also make railguns now. And while they are very cool, outside of the obvious use case of using them to destroy asteroids, they're kind of pointless. I really can't think of any enemies that I need this kind of firepower for. I guess maybe it's a cheaper way of killing the worms and volcanists. But as far as spiders and pentapods are concerned, they are already no problem. Actually, giving it some thought now while editing, I think maybe I have a use case in Navis. I'm gonna give that a try later. But for now, I'm just going to make the handheld version. I'm only going to make this once, so I'm going to make it the highest quality I can. That's going to take a while, so meanwhile I should start some side projects. Like making these foundations, which, put very simply, are landfill for oil oceans and lava. If I want to increase my production of Volgora, I'm definitely going to need a lot of these. Since I've spent so long getting my ass back to Nauis, those legendary production modules I needed has shown up on their own. You see, when I started recording this episode, I had an epiphany. I previously mentioned how making high-quality materials with the foundry is a bit difficult because, well, liquids don't influence quality. So when you cast copper plates with a foundry, you only use liquids, so you can only make them in base quality. But then I suddenly had the brilliant realization: liquids don't influence quality. And low-density structures have only one solid component: plastic. Not only that, but there's also research which increases your productivity. So I have researched that technology 15 times, giving me 150% extra productivity. Combined with the innate bonus of the foundry, we're now at 200%. And each module gives me 25%, landing me at 300% extra productivity. So we just take that legendary coal from the platforms and turn it into plastic. And the foundry will then take that plastic and make low-density structures, 4 of them for the price of 1. And when we recycle them, we get 25% of the materials back. Put simply, when we recycle, we get the same number of plastic bars back as we put in. Theoretically, as long as you supply molten iron and copper, we can keep making them without losing any plastic bars. But as you can probably see, that molten iron and copper is returned as steel bars and copper plates. So essentially, we can make as many steel and copper plates as we want for free. That leaves us with a pretty major bottleneck, which is iron plates. I suspect the best way of dealing with that is just making a platform that's only trying to get iron ore. But I do have some other theories that I'm going to explore. Back on Aquilo, my new railgun has finally arrived. I'm going to be honest, a range of 60 is a bit lower than what I expected. I wonder if maybe it had a longer range in the space exploration mod. What's not disappointing is the damage numbers. Starting at 10,000 and scaling quickly with upgrades. You of course won't find many enemies that actually need this kind of damage. Well, I got what I was waiting for, so I might as well go back to Nauis now. Back on Nauis, there's quite a few things on the agenda, but there's one thing I really want to do first. First, some legendary quality modules. And then let's grind up Dan and hope for the best. Ah, for fuck's sake. I was really hoping to get a fish out of this. But in the end, it doesn't really matter. After all, the one I just recycled was just a copy anyway. At least I think it's a copy. I'm not entirely sure which one is the original anymore. And I don't care enough to check the footage. And I don't need to recycle since my factory has already made a few legendary spitrons. I was considering save scumming until I got a fish so I could continue Dan's lineage. Well, but when I already had a few legendary spitrons lying around, the whole thing kind of just seemed stupid to me. And there is no reason why this spitron can't be its own individual. Now that Dan is his own original character, please don't steal, there is something we need to confirm. And yes, we are faster than trains. Unfortunately, having 8 legs also makes you a bit clumsy. As you can see, the speed I'm getting is pretty inconsistent. I can move at incredibly high speeds for a while, as long as I don't stumble on anything. And even if I take the time to clear a straight road, I will eventually stumble on nothing and lose all that speed. Hopefully, they'll fix this. Or maybe there already exists a mod that fixes this. Of course, my power armor will also need an upgrade, a process I expected to take just 5 minutes, which of course turned out to be 5 hours. It also needs reasonable equipment, so another few hours. But we should probably first see how it does with unreasonable equipment. And here's a 500 meter track to test it. Less than 1.5 seconds. But if we eat some bioflux, we can go faster. Wow. Okay, let's try one more time with the exoskeleton. That was 500 meters in just over a second. The precise number is a bit uncertain, but I'm going to say that the final speed is probably about 460 meters per second, or about 1,650 kilometers per hour. If there's any Americans out there that's wondering what 1,650 kilometers is, it's a proper measurement used by educated people. And I guess I'm also using it, so it's also used by uneducated people. Of course, it wouldn't be fair of me to not tell the Americans how fast I'm moving in a way they can understand. So I was moving about half the speed of a bullet fired from an M4A4 rifle. I hope that clears everything up for you. Now for something we can all relate to. I really want to exploit the indigenous inhabitants of this planet. Until now, this has been a very annoying affair. But since I recently acquired the ability to create domiciles for them wherever I want, I can start making these handy little landlocked camps where I can force them to create eggs for me. This might seem cruel, but originally I was just going to kill them, so I'm actually very kind. I'm even giving them food. That's certainly not something I would do if I didn't have the moral high ground. So the operation here is very simple. I take a bunch of eggs and shove them into the recyclers, hoping for better quality eggs, and then, well, loop until I get legendary quality. This isn't a very efficient operation, of course. I destroy almost 3,000 eggs per minute, and in return I get one legendary egg about every other minute. That'll have to do for now, because if I want to make more eggs, I need more bioflux, which means going back to Gleba and refactoring my factory. Something I can't do in good conscience when Fulgora looks like this. But I'm not really interested in fixing Fulgora at the moment. I would much rather find a way to generate more iron plates. One option I found is using the foundry to make concrete, and recycling concrete has a chance to give me iron ore. The stone bricks I need for this is easily generated on volcanoes using calcite. It is pretty resource efficient, but honestly very slow. I'll have to keep my eye out for more efficient ways. Speaking of which, maybe I can just make pipes. It turns out I can make pipes, and it's actually very good. What I like about this setup is that it makes high quality iron plates very quickly using only molten iron. It starts down here making normal pipes, it then gets sent along and sorted and turned into underground pipes twice the quality. All the underground pipes then gets put on a belt and sent down here for recycling. After recycling, all the normal pipes get sent back into the system, while all the iron plates will get sorted out and end up here. Here, the iron plates will once again get turned into pipes. Unless of course they're legendary quality, in which case they get sorted out here. All other qualities get put into this chest. There are selector combinators reading the contents of the chest and finding the highest quality. They then output a pipe signal of that quality. That pipe signal is then used to set the recipes. This isn't strictly necessary, but it does cut down on the number of assemblers I need and the number of quality modules. And of course, any pipes made here then get sent back into the system. I'm kinda running out of things I want to do in this episode, but I can't end yet because I'm still waiting for my train to get finished. I guess there's still a few more things I can do. For example, I still have to take that trip to Vulcanus. Quite predictably, the railgun makes the demolishers trivial. I think we've seen enough, so let's just head back home. It's still going to be a while before my train is finished. I'm doing a lot of production optimization behind the scenes, but it's not really interesting to watch, so have some spy drones instead. I just remembered I'm also going to need a good railgun before my train's finished. Unfortunately, this is pretty slow because I still need to fix Gleba and Fulgora before I can make these in high quantities. And you know what, I'm not really planning to do anything with it this episode, but let's just research the final science pack. So that was the final technology. To be honest, I'm not really sure what kind of goal I should have before I end the series. I am planning to make another episode where I fix the other planets, but outside of that I'm not really sure when I should call the series finished. So I'd appreciate any suggestions for a goal I should reach before I end it. End the series. You probably understood. I'm starting to get close to finishing my artillery wagons, which also means I'm very close to finishing this episode. This new train is a lot longer than the previous one, so I should probably expand this spiral. Yeah, that's not even close. Let's try one more time, it should be big enough this time. Okay, so I already see a slight problem. If you're using the game's built-in feature to connect rails, you should probably make sure that they actually make sense. The funny thing is that the wagons are so heavy that the train doesn't ever stop. This wouldn't have been nearly as funny if I could just load a game to fix this. And to be clear, yes, this was actually an accident. Jesus Christ, it just keeps going. So I haven't mentioned it yet, but this new train consists of 480 legendary artillery wagons and 48 locomotives. All the locomotives are also running on legendary nuclear fuel, so it can actually move. It's starting to lose momentum now, so there's probably not many wagons left. This is taking way too long, let's just speed up the rest. You know what? Screw it, it's taking way too long. To give you an idea of the scale of this train, it's still in the depot when it reaches Spiral. This looks very promising. Jesus Christ. So I just give these two rails a bit more space. There we go, it finally works. But this was just a test to see if the depot works. But I did discover something interesting which I haven't seen before. Look at this guy go. None of the others are firing, but this guy is going crazy. It's also causing all the other ones not to fire. Enough about that. Let's get to the grand finale I planned for this episode. What I want to test is if I put one of these artillery stations in the water where there's no way to reach it by land, and then give the biters a very narrow land bridge so they can reach the train, then this might just be a situation where the railgun is actually useful. Let's send in the train and see what happens. At this point, I can confidently say that everything worked the way I hoped it would. All the angry biters tried to attack the train and started funneling down the narrow land bridge. And just a single railgun could hold them all off by itself. Speaking of which, that railgun just crossed 1 billion damage. That number is of course a bit inflated since it counts the full 38,000 per hit. But overall, I would call this a pretty great success. I should think this is a pretty good time to end the episode. But if you're interested in how the new circuitry that controls the turrets and the train station works, then I'll go over that now. First of all, you probably noticed that they are without power. That's because these Tesla turrets, even when they aren't doing anything, are really power hungry. So in order to save power, I disconnect them from the power network when they're not doing anything. And with a bit of circuitry, I have a rocket turret that when it fires, activates this timer circuit. And as long as the timer circuit is active, the turrets are connected to the power network. I assume it's pretty likely that most of you have probably seen something like this before. I'm going to be using this specific kind of timer circuit very much in this build, so I should probably explain it. Put very simply, it's a set reset latch that can be reset either by a signal or by the timer running out. I'm pretty sure I've explained both of those before, and this is just taking both of those concepts and putting them into a single combinator. It would probably be best if we got out the diagram. It all starts over here with the rocket turret. When it sees a biter, it shoots at it, which sends a signal in two different directions. First, as I already explained to the set reset timer over here, I'll call these set reset timers just SRTs from now on. When that SRT is activated, it flips this power switch, which energizes the turrets in that turret block. And when a rocket is fired, it will also send a set signal over to the train station circuitry. That set signal is then split into two, mostly for timing reasons. That's because I need these two combinators to receive the signal at the same time. I want this circuitry to count how many attacks have happened, not how many rockets have been fired by all the rocket turrets. So I added a 1 minute cooldown between each time an attack can be counted. That's the job of this SRT over here. And this combinator, before it forwards the attack count signal, first checks that this SRT isn't active. That's why they need to receive the signal on the same frame. On the next frame, the SRT will be active, preventing any more attack count signals. The attack count signal will be forwarded to this memory cell, and that memory cell will be read by a combinator checking if the number of attacks has exceeded the threshold. Once the threshold is reached, it will output a set signal. That signal activates an SRT which turns on the station. The artillery train will then go to that station, and after 10 minutes the SRT will deactivate itself, turning off the station. If there's nothing to shoot at, the train will try to leave, and if it does, it will send a reset signal, stopping the SRT. The reset signal is also sent to the memory, putting the attack counter back to 0. Hopefully this made some amount of sense. This is a pretty niche circuit, so I ended up not putting a huge amount of editing into this. But if for whatever reason you see this and go like, oh, this is exactly what I need, then just leave a comment and I'll clean it up a bit and upload a blueprint. It's time to wrap this up. Now I usually end my videos by making a strange sound and running off, but there are only so many different sounds I can make. So let's try something different instead. Almost exactly 10 years ago now, I bought a DSLR camera to help me get outside and back into shape. I really enjoy nature photography and I would usually take hundreds of pictures every month. But 4 years ago, I suddenly stopped. This is about the time my oldest son learned to run. I can assure you this is not a coincidence. I simply haven't had the time to prioritize going out and taking pictures anymore. So from now on, I want to start ending my videos by showing you some of my favorite pictures and forcing myself to get new ones. This picture you're seeing now is from 3 AM outside my house. I really like how the sky ended up looking like rippling water when the sun barely touched the clouds from over the horizon. Something I should also mention now is that, yes, this video took 3 months to make. That's almost as bad as the Gleba video. And I'm pretty sure I know why. Because, just like how I mentioned my oldest son started to run and I suddenly didn't have time to take pictures anymore, guess what my youngest son has started to do? If I want to keep making videos, I probably have to lower my standards even further. I guess we'll just have to see what happens. Well, until next time, which hopefully isn't as far off.